Bible Study Guide, third quarter of 2026. 1 and 2 Corinthians Lesson 1. Paul's ministry in Corinth. Memory text of the week. One night the Lord said to Paul in a vision, "Do not be afraid, but speak and do not be silent, for I am with you, and no one will lay a hand on you to harm you, for there are many in this city who are my people." Acts 18, verses 9 and 10, NRSV. Tuesday, June 30th, the city of Corinth. What kind of city was Corinth, and why did Paul choose it as a mission base? Corinth was one of the most important cities in the ancient world, renowned for its prosperous commerce. Originally destroyed by Rome in 146 BC, it was rebuilt by Julius Caesar as a Roman colony in 44 BC. And it is this rebuilt Roman Corinth that appears throughout the New Testament. By Paul's time, Corinth had become one of Athens' greatest rivals, surpassing it in several aspects of commerce and influence. It possessed two important harbors that made the exchange of merchandise across the ancient world remarkably easy. Paul chose Corinth precisely because of this strategic importance. As Ellen White writes in Sketches from the Life of Paul, an opportunity was thus presented for the spread of the gospel. Once established at Corinth, it would be readily communicated to all parts of the world. Question 2. How did Corinth's economy benefit Paul's missionary work practically? Corinth's flourishing commerce created a ready market for tentmaking, Paul's trade. Acts chapter 18 verses 2 and 3 tell us that Paul stayed with Aquila and Priscilla and worked with them, for they were tentmakers by trade. The busy commercial city made it possible for Paul to support himself financially, while simultaneously proclaiming the gospel. His work was never a distraction from mission. It was the very vehicle that sustained it. What was the religious climate of Corinth like in Paul's day? Corinth was marked by blatant religious pluralism. 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 5 acknowledges the reality of many gods and many lords, and Corinth embodied this fully. The city was filled with numerous shrines dedicated to deities such as Apollo, Athena, and Aphrodite. Even Egyptian gods like Serapis and Isis had found their way into Corinthian worship. This was a city saturated with idolatry in every form, making the exclusive claims of the gospel of Christ both countercultural and confrontational. Question 4. What was the moral condition of Corinth, and how did it affect the church? Beyond religious confusion, Corinth was also infamous for sexual licentiousness. The Greek geographer Strabo records that the temple of Aphrodite in Corinth housed 1,000 sacred prostitutes devoted to her worship. Though many scholars treat this figure with caution, noting its possible links to Athenian propaganda. What is beyond dispute is that sexual immorality was deeply embedded in Corinthian culture. Idolatry and immorality were part of daily life. This sad reality explains much of the content of both 1 and 2 Corinthians. Paul was writing to believers who had come out of this environment and were still being pulled back into it. Question 5. What challenges does the culture of Corinth present to us today, and how can we respond? The honest answer is that Corinth is not so different from our cities today. Religious pluralism, sexual immorality, and the worship of wealth and pleasure are not ancient problems. They are present realities. The challenge for every believer is the same one Paul faced: how to preach a gospel that is exclusive, holy, and demanding in a culture that celebrates every opposite. Paul's answer was not to retreat, not to compromise, and not to shout louder than the noise. His answer was the message of Jesus Christ and Him crucified, the one message with the power to transform any life, in any city, in any generation. That is still our answer today. Lord be with you and keep you safe. Amen.